Growing up, everyone tells you that if you work hard, you'll be successful. But nobody really explains what that actually means. Nobody sits you down and teaches you how to manage your first paycheck, how to avoid bad debt, how investing works, and how small decisions with money can completely change your future. So this video is about the stuff we're expected to know as adults, but we're never really taught. Nobody gives you a manual for adult life. One day you're in school asking to go to the bathroom, and the next you're expected to understand credit cards, taxes, student loans, investing, rent, bills, and how to actually build a future for yourself. That's why I wanted to make my first video about this, to help similar people in similar situations as myself. I'm not making this video because I have everything figured out. I don't. But I think that's the point. A lot of us are trying to learn this stuff while we're already dealing with it. So today I want to break down some of the basic money and investing lessons that school should have taught us before we got thrown into the real world. And just to be clear, this isn't financial advice, it's just real life money talk from someone trying to learn, improve, and build a better future for themselves. So let's get right into the video. The first thing that I wish I learned earlier is that saving money is important. But saving alone probably won't make you wealthy. Don't get me wrong, you need savings. You need to set money aside for emergencies, car repairs, bills, or random things life throws at you. But the problem is, if all your money just sits in a regular bank account for years, it can lose its value over time. Because prices go up, food gets more expensive, gas gets more expensive, and pretty much everything else gets more expensive. So even if your bank account says the same number as it did a few years ago, that money probably won't be worth the same amount further down the line. So that's where investing comes in. Investing helps you grow over the long term, and I feel like a lot of people never get that explained properly. They just hear the word investing and think it's only for rich people or people who already understand the stock market. But really, investing is just putting your money somewhere that has the potential to grow over time. A lot of people think you need thousands and thousands of dollars to start investing, but you really don't. You can start small, and honestly, starting small is probably better because it helps you build the habit. The main thing is just learning how it works. For example, a lot of beginners start with ETFs. ETF stands for an exchange traded fund. An ETF is basically a basket of investments, so instead of buying one single company, you could buy something that holds a bunch of different companies inside of it. So instead of trying to pick the next Apple, Amazon, or Tesla, you can own a small piece of a lot of companies at one time. So that helps you spread out your risk. Because if one company has a bad year, your entire future doesn't depend on that one stock. That's something I wish I was taught in school, because when people don't understand investing, they either avoid it completely or treat it like gambling. They hear about a random stock online, throw money into it, and hope that it takes off. But real investing should have a plan. It should be long term. It should be based on patience and not panic. The biggest advantage that young people have is time. Not money, not experience, but time. Because the earlier you start investing, the more time your money has to grow. And that's because of something called compound growth. So what that is, basically your money can earn returns, and then those returns can start earning returns too. So at first, it might feel slow, you might invest a little bit and feel like nothing is happening, but over years, it can start to snowball. That's why starting early matters so much. Even if it's not a lot, even if it's just a small amount every week or every month, the point is building the habit and letting time do some of the work. A basic example of compound growth is if you were to invest in a GIC. So a GIC is a guaranteed investment certificate, and it guarantees a percentage of a return on your principal investment that is guaranteed. So pretty much you put $1,000 in at 3% per year, you make that 3% on that $1,000, so now you're left with $1,030, and now that is now invested at 3% for the next year. A lot of people wait until they feel ready. They say, I'll start investing when I make more money, or I'll start when I start understanding everything. But the truth is, you're probably never going to feel 100% ready. You learn by starting small, staying consistent, and not making emotional decisions every time the market moves. Another thing that I think schools should teach is how credit cards work, because credit cards are not free money. Now, I'm a banker, so I see pretty much every day people using credit cards incorrectly, and they end up being in debt that is pretty difficult to get out of. Now, this debt is hard to get out of because credit card interest is usually extremely high. And the scary part is, a lot of people don't realize how fast it could build up. You might start with a small balance and think, I'll pay it off later. But then the interest gets added. Then maybe another expense comes up. Then you can only make the minimum payment. And before you know it, the balance is barely moving, even though you feel like you're paying it every single month. That's how people get trapped. The minimum payment keeps you in the game, but it doesn't always get you out quickly. And that's something I wish was explained better. A credit card is not bad by itself. It can actually be very useful if you use it properly. It can help you build your credit, track your spending, and sometimes even earn some pretty good rewards. But the second you start using it for things you can't actually afford, it becomes a very dangerous thing. So the way I look at it is simple. A credit card should be used like a debit card. Don't spend money on it unless you already have the money sitting there to pay it off. Because the goal is not to build a lifestyle on borrowed money. The goal is to use credit as a tool and not let it control you. And that leads into another big lesson that they don't teach you in high school, which is looking rich and actually being good with money are two completely different things. A lot of people think being successful means having the nicest car, the newest phone, expensive clothes, and always going out flexing on everybody. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with enjoying your money. But if every dollar you make is going right back out, you're not really building anything. You're just keeping up an image. And honestly, I think a big problem is social media. You see people posting vacations, cars, their outfits, fancy restaurants, and all these highlights of their life. But what you don't actually see is the credit card balance. You don't see the stress behind the scenes, and you don't see whether they actually own anything or if they're just making monthly payments on everything. And that's why comparing yourself to others can mess with your money decisions, because you might feel behind even when you're actually doing the right things. Building wealth is usually not flashy. Sometimes building wealth looks boring. It looks like driving the same car for longer. It looks like investing instead of buying something random. And it also looks like saying no to things you don't actually need. It looks like saving money instead of spending everything to impress people. And that's a hard lesson, because nobody really claps for you when you make smart financial decisions. Nobody sees you pay off your debt. Nobody sees you build an emergency fund. Nobody sees you invest consistently. But those are the things that actually change your future. So instead of trying to look rich, the goal should be to build a real financial stability for yourself, because looking rich can disappear really fast. But good habits, smart decisions, and long-term investing can actually put you in a better position. And that brings me to the next thing that they don't teach you. Your income matters, but your habits matter just as much. A lot of people think that if I just made more money, all of my problems would be solved. And honestly, making more money does help. It gives you more options, more breathing room, and more ability to save or invest. But making more money does not automatically mean you're good with money. Because if your spending goes up every time your income goes up, you can still feel broke no matter how much you make. This is what we call lifestyle inflation. You get a raise, and instead of using that extra money to get ahead, you immediately upgrade everything. A better car, more takeout, more clothes, more subscriptions, more random spending, and before you know it, you're making more money than before, but you're still in the exact same spot financially. That's why the goal is not to just make more money. The goal is to create a gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is where progress happens. That's the money you can save. That's the money you can invest. That's the money you can use to pay off your debt. And that's the money that gives you freedom. Because financial freedom doesn't always mean being a millionaire. Sometimes it just means having more options. It means not panicking when you need car repairs. It means not relying on your next paycheck just to survive. And it also means being able to take an opportunity because you're not trapped by bad money decisions. And the earlier you build those habits, the better. Because small habits repeated over time can turn into a completely different life. And that leads into my last point of this video. You need to know where your money is actually going. This sounds basic, but it's one of the biggest things people ignore. A lot of people don't even realize how much they spend in a month. They know their rent, they know their car payment, they know the big bills, but they don't always notice the smaller stuff, like the $8 coffees, the random takeout, and the subscriptions that they forgot about. These are all little purchases that don't feel like a big deal in the moment, but by the end of the month, all of those small things can add up fast. And I'm not saying that you have to track every penny forever or never enjoy your money. That's not realistic at all. But you should at least have some idea of what's coming in, what's going out, and what you're actually keeping. Because if you don't control your money will control you. And this is where budgeting gets a bad reputation. People hear the word budget and think it means restriction. Like you can't have any fun, you can't go out, and you can't buy anything. But really, a budget is just a plan. It's you telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. It helps you figure out what matters to you. Maybe you do want to spend more money on food, clothes, sports, gaming, or going out with friends, and that's fine. But the key is making sure those things fit into the bigger picture. Because the goal isn't to never spend money. The goal is to spend with intention. Know your bills, build an emergency fund, pay off bad debt, invest when you can, and still leave room to enjoy your life. That's the balance that they don't really teach you in high school. Because being good with money isn't about being cheap. It's about being aware. It's about making decisions that won't hurt your future. It's about realizing that every dollar has a job. Some dollars are for bills, some are for saving, some are for investing, and some are for enjoying your life. But if every dollar disappears without a plan, it becomes a lot harder to get ahead. So if you're just starting out, don't overcomplicate it. Look at what you make, look at what you spend, cut the stuff that doesn't really matter, keep the stuff that actually adds value to your life, and try to make sure every month you're moving at least one step forward. That can mean saving a little bit, paying down debt, starting to invest, or just becoming more aware of your habits. Progress doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be consistent. So at the end of the day, these are the things I think should have been taught way earlier: how to manage money, how to avoid bad debt, how investing actually works, how to build good habits, and how to make decisions that future you will actually be thankful for. I'm not saying you need to have everything figured out right away, because I definitely don't. But I do think the earlier you start learning this stuff, the better position you put yourself in. Even small changes can make a big difference if you stick with them. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching my first video. This channel is going to be about money, investing, mindset, and learning how to build a better future one step at a time. If you got value from this video, drop a like, subscribe, and comment one money lesson you wish you learned earlier. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.